This church still draws worshipers, a reminder that this part of the world was once Russian America. Here in the 49th state, Alaska, around such little churches cling many traces of ancient Russian culture in 20th century America, in some cases mixed with Indian culture, as these graves show. Standing on the site of the first permanent white settlement in Alaska, the place where Alaskan history really began. On this spot, Russian traders and colonists, led by Governor Baranov, established a stockade and buildings to house the offices more than 150 years ago. Here grew New Archangel, which became Sitka, the Russian capital of Russian America, the largest center of Western civilization on the whole North American West Coast. On this little hill, in 1867, the Russian flag was lowered and the American flag was raised to mark the fact that Alaska had become United States territory. This little hill, the Russians, were an essential part of Alaskan history. The gold rush, the frenzied hunger for gold, were another essential element. To trace these threads in Alaska's history, we begin here in Sitka, where it all began. Sitka is located in the panhandle southern section of Alaska, an area mild in winter, cool in summer. Sitka was once an Indian town, first settled by Governor Baranov in 1799. His men almost wiped out by the Indians. He returned in 1804 to make this the headquarters of Russian America. Princess Maksutov, wife of the last Russian governor, died here. A Russian orphanage was founded. In the early 1800s, with its cosmopolitan setting, glittering official balls, Sitka was the largest West Coast center of civilization north of Mexico City, when San Francisco was a mud hut mission and Yankee skippers in awe called Sitka the Paris of the Pacific. With the Russian fur traders came Orthodox priests. St. Michael's Cathedral stands today in the center of Sitka. When Russia sold the land to the United States, what of the Russians, some 3 generations in America? Some went to the Russia they had never known. Others remained. Mr. John Panamakov is a descendant of one of these, and I asked him when the Russians first came to Alaska.
The Russians came here somewhere prior to 1795, but there was not too many of them. When Baranov came here in 1795 on several ships, he came down here from Kodiak to establish a post here in 6 miles north of this location in order to explore for more seal otters. So when he returned back to Kodiak, he left quite a few people in charge of this post north of the present Sitka.
Is there any Russian still spoken in Alaska at the present time?
Oh, in Alaska at the present time, yes, there is some Russian spoken yet, but not too many speak the Russian language in Sitka any longer.
Well, do you speak it yourself?
Oh, yes, I speak the Russian language very well. I can't forget it, because after my school days, you know, I can't forget it. As a matter of fact, I got all my instruction in Sitka, Alaska, in the Russian language, in the Russian orphanage.
When did they stop teaching Russian in the schools of Sitka, Mr. Panamakov?
Well, about the year of 1911, when the schools were closed entirely. Because after we left here in 1910, why, there was very little money coming from Russia, which were maintaining the schools here up to that time. And so they were getting ready to close up the entire school, so they dismissed it about 1911.
Inside St. Michael's is all the richness and imagery of an ancient tradition of Christianity, the Russian Orthodox Church. The timbers of the church came from a wrecked Russian warship, the Neva. The Sitka Madonna, Our Lady of Kazan, like all the other robes and icons and other church treasures, was brought from Moscow across all Siberia. The priest who welcomed us and is showing the cathedral's historic pieces is Father Basil Nagoski, originally from Ohio, trained in the Orthodox Seminary in New York. This is his first parish, but as the resident priest of the cathedral, he has become a well-loved and important figure in the life of the Sitka community. St. Michael's Cathedral is the episcopal seat of Bishop Ambrosi. There is peace and beauty in the chalices, the prayer books, the crosses, the chandeliers, all the other treasures of the Orthodox Church. These details of the cathedral, crowns for the Russian Orthodox weddings, remind us that the Russian culture, language, religion spread into the wilderness. They have remained, have persisted for the 100 years, 4 generations. The Russians who came here stayed, colonized, civilized, left their traces all over the northwest shoulder of the continent, because it is the religion, the Christianity of the Eastern Church, that has somehow continued through all the years. To this cathedral, for more than 100 years, the bells have been calling the parishioners to worship. But the tradition of old Alaska that grips our imagination is the gold rush. Here in Sitka, at the pioneer's home, the statue of the prospector in his heyday 60-odd years ago. In Juneau's Red Dog Saloon, Hattie Jessup, who was a little girl at the time, plays ragtime in the old tradition. To recall those early days, we flew to Skagway between a narrow mountain gap. Skagway, a name known all over the world 60-odd years ago. But let the poet laureate of Alaska and the Yukon, Robert W. Service, tell the story of how 100,000 men, and some women, rushed into Skagway and Dyea to climb the Chilkoot and the White Pass, surging toward the Klondike in Canada. Gold, we leaped from our benches. Gold, we sprang from our stools. Gold, we wheeled in the furrow, fired with the faith of fools. Fearless, unfound, unfitted, far from the night and the cold, heard we the clarion summons, followed the master lure, gold. We landed in windswept Skagway. We joined the weltering mass, clambering over their outfits, waiting to climb the pass. We tightened our girths and our pack straps. We linked on the human chain, struggling up to the summit, where every step was a pain. Klondike or bust rang the slogan, every man for his own. Oh, how we flogged the horses, staggering skin and bone. Never will I forget it, there on the mountain face, ant-like men with their burdens, clinging in icy space. Dogged, determined, and dauntless, cruel and callous and cold, cursing, blaspheming, reviling, and ever that battle cry, gold. All the world knew Skagway and Dyea at the head of the Lynn Canal, bridges to the Yukon, bridges to gold, a human anthill, a melee of men, horses, and supplies, tents, shacks, hundreds of vessels bringing newcomers every day, saloons, the pack train inn, broken down horses dying along the trail and covered with the snows of winter. Hardly 1 in 1,000 survived the entire trip to the gold fields along what is still known as Dead Horse Trail. Skagway was called the roughest place on earth, with a crash of dance bands, shouts of murder, and the crackle of gunshots every night. Skagway still exists, and the big excitement is when a tourist boat comes in. The town lives on tourism. It's one of the friendliest places on earth for a tourist. At night in Skagway, they put on a show, the Trail of 98, for the tourists. They dress in gold rush styles. Women take the names of some of the fancy women, not ladies, who were famous during the rush. Roughhouse Rosie, Lynn Canal Sal, Diamond Lil, Sweet Marie, Big Essie. Gambling wheels are brought out, the old ones, and tourists use stage money to win a prize. Dance hall girls do the can-can. Then they reenact the shooting of Dan McGrew, the gambler in the Malamute Saloon. You may remember the man from the Cricks in a buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt. But I want to state, my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true, that one of you is a hound of hell, and that man is Dan McGrew. Then I ducked my head, and the lights went out, and 2 guns blazed in the dark. A woman screamed, and the lights went up, and 2 men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead was dangerous Dan McGrew, while the man from the Cricks lay clutched to the breast of the lady known as Lou. Skagway today, once a brawling metropolis of 10,000, there are 800 people left in Skagway now. Their sole business, tourism, unless a huge aluminum plant they dream about should be built and bring new life and prosperity. The buildings, some of them are the same. The town has 2 good hotels. We stayed at the Golden North, utterly delightful. Authentic furnishings of your grandmother's day, each bedroom named after a Skagway pioneer, filled with old pictures. The Pack Train Inn, run by an Italian called McGee, who won his name in a card game in World War II. But old Skagway was virtually owned by a desperado named Soapy Smith, Jefferson Smith, until the town turned against him. Vigilantes were organized. Frank Reed, a vigilante, fought it out with Soapy, and both men died. Today their graves are a few yards apart. Frank Reed, who gave his life, as the monument says, for the honor of Skagway. A monument for him, and for Soapy, an unhonored grave. In the old gold rush days, Skagway seems to have been a pretty wild place. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer of March 16, 1898, calls Skagway the wickedest city in the world because of Soapy Smith. And it quotes him as refusing to leave town even though 100 marshals were trying to force him to go. Eyewitnesses spoke of a gambler killing a marshal here, the piracy of a wrecked ship's cargo, 2 or 3 robberies daily, men sandbagged in the streets and doorways, robbed by fast women. U.S. troops declared martial law on the night of March 9, 1898. As a matter of fact, I'm standing in Soapy Smith's own saloon, although for many years it's not been used for that purpose. On the walls are newspapers of the days of '98. A picture of Martin Itchen, who once owned this saloon after Soapy's death, and who built the only streetcar in Skagway. And a picture of the Jefferson, the big passenger vessel that used to bring tourists, passengers, and freight to Skagway. Now, with me today is Mr. Bill Matthews, one of the earliest citizens, at least he came here, in the very beginnings of Skagway. I might say he's not this gentleman with the beard and the cigar. That is a dummy of Soapy Smith made about 35 years ago. Well, Bill, did you actually ever see Soapy Smith?
Yes, sir. I've saw him many times.
Well, how did that happen?
Well, he had a saloon just a short ways from where I lived in Davie, And I've seen him many times go to and from the saloon, and also I've seen him in the streets.
Well, Dyea was a pretty big town, wasn't it?
Oh, 20,000.
Well, what is it today?
Well, there's 5 or 6 over there now.
Well, how many buildings were there? Didn't you say that there was a hotel there?
Well, the Olympic Hotel was the biggest hotel was ever built in Alaska. I don't think even today there is one as big as that. It covered the whole block square, 426 rooms, and had a lobby on each corner of the thing, on the 2 north corners, rather.
But then didn't Dyea suddenly disappear practically?
Well, it practically died in a year's time. Just went from big city to nothing.
Well, what happened? Why?
Well, the railroad, there were 2 railroads called the Home Railroad at Dyea and the White Pass at Skagway. And the Haley and Wilson Trading Post kept the Dyea Railroad from going through. Well, when they did that, why, Skagway got the start on them. And as soon as Skagway got the start, people knew then that Dyea was to an end.
Up this valley was the Chilkoot Pass, where the human chain climbed straight up to get through the mountains to the Klondike. A town of 10,000 once, today what you see, nothing. No 426-room Olympic Hotel never occupied, no saloons, no dance halls, a town that died and completely disappeared. From Dyea, the town that is no longer even a ghost, we flew north to trace the course of those gold seekers of long ago to Nome on the edge of the Arctic Circle. Gold was discovered near Nome in 1899. By 1900, 20,000 people were living there. The beach was lined with tents as prospectors culled the golden sands. One of the most remarkable stampedes in history, it has been called. Rex Beach wrote The Spoilers, the true story of the crook Mackenzie and his crooked federal judge Noyes, who fleeced the prospectors using the law until an honest lawyer was able to escape south to tell the story, and federal justice caught up with the crooks. Nome, a town built on permafrost. Population down to 2,500 by 1910, and it's about the same today. Isolated, no road to anywhere, but gold dredging has continued for 60 years and will probably end this coming year. Gold everywhere, but too costly to dredge it out. For a view of the old days, I talked with Charlie D. Jones, prospector, once a state senator, a real sourdough. And he showed me the technique of panning gold, even found a speck or 2 glittering gold in the black sand of his pan.
See? That gets the light stuff to the top.
Oh, it's that brown dirt. I saw you
Yeah.
put a shovel full of what looked like ordinary gravel in
Yeah,
there.
sure, that was in there, and that's the light stuff, but we're shaking it to get it to the top.
I see. The water floats that away, and then you get that...
You see, there's just one little fine color showing down there now.
Oh, that little... That's a piece of gold.
Yes, that's a piece of gold.
Oh, it's
right
with
there.
that black sand,
Yes,
is that
sir, but
right?
it's black sand. You see, it, no matter how you shake it, it stays there in that same place.
That's heavier, and it
that's
sinks to the
heavier,
bottom
it
and
sinks to the
stays
bottom.
there. And
You might get 3 or 4 or 5 colors out of this stuff, you see, but it's the light. You have to keep panning it and get that off, and then this ruby sand that you see there and the black sand all stays down there, and that gold, and that's what makes it. A lot of these fellas started to mine on the beach, didn't know about that, and they thought the more you could shovel through, the more you'd get. Well, the gold was so fine that a lot of that ruby sand and black sand carried it right off with it, you see.
well, did you use these pans when you were mining gold? Did you use them to work the gold, or did you just find the
Just to
gold?
find the gold.
The whole method, then, depends on the fact of gold being heavier than
And
the sand.
the heavier and the heaviest than anything in here. Now, up at out there where I worked on Bonita Creek, I
Yes.
had a lot of scheelite there. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was some kind of heavy quartz, you see. I threw it all away. My partner and I afterwards, we sold $6,000 worth of that scheelite.
Well, how did you mine that out on the creek?
Well, we got it in the boxes,
Well, did you have a sluice? Or did
A sluice box, yes.
That's a long
yes,
wooden, I've seen pictures of
yeah,
it.
that's the sluice box. And then,
how did that work, sir?
well, it pretty good.
Well, I mean, what was the theory then?
Well, they have specific gravity of scheelite, pretty heavy. That's tungsten, you see, is what scheelite is, you see.
But they did that for gold, and did they put the water in and run it
yes,
down?
sir, run it in just like if you were sluicing gold.
And the gold, and the gold, and the other metal stuck to the bottom.
And the scheelite would settle. Yeah, and then when you would take the riffles out, you would take your broom to hold the gold back, and let the scheelite and go down, and then you'd get it that way.
Well,
see.
you were one of the first prospectors to come here to know Mr. Jones.
Well, no, I wasn't. I was among the first. I was one of the first because there's lots of fellows here that forgot more than probably I've learned about Placer Mine. They were old timers, you know, and they'd been all over Alaska, and they came here from Circle and Eagle and Dawson and up in the Cass Yard. There's a couple of old fellows down here from the Cass Yard, the brothers that they had worked up there. It took $14,000 out of the bottom of the shaft, 4x5.
How much do you think has been taken off this beach here at Nome?
Oh,
how much money?
Off the beach from Quartz Creek to Cape Nome here, I'm satisfied there's $10 million was taken off.
What was Nome like when you first arrived here?
She was a rip-roaring 24-hour-a-day town, and everything was going. And there were some shootings, but not as much as people made out there was. There were some.
Were they all living in tents then?
Well, tents and makeshift, whatever they could, and then they built. There's lots of lumber came in. There was a outfit that had chartered the Groan in England, and they came in here to clear it for St. Michael to go up to Dawson, and they heard about this the strike over here at Nome, and they came up and Barretsy. They came and unloaded the whole thing and sold the whole thing here. And then they skipped out before the customs house could get a hold of them.
Almost like pirates.
They finally got her.
Did they?
They finally got her, and they used her for transporting troops over to Manila in the Spanish-American War.
Well, tell me about the city of Nome itself, Mr. Jones. When you first came here, were they all digging all along this beach?
They're all along the beach. I went up there and put up a tent and started to mine, but heavens, I didn't know more about mining than a hog does about singing hymns. So that
you didn't make much money out of the beach
there. I fell alongside of me rocking there making $50 a day, and I wasn't making $3, so it shows how little I knew, see.
Well, you could live pretty well on $4 or $5 a day in those days, couldn't you?
Well, not at the start you couldn't. That came later when all these other restaurants and things got up, and all these people that came up to start restaurants, one thing or another. I paid $1.50 for eggs, for ham and eggs, the first meal I got in Nome. When I got off the boat,
Sounds like modern day prices.
Yeah.
What kind of men came up here to Nome searching for gold?
Every kind in the world. We got them from the scum of the earth to some fine people, and wonderful women came up here. And
Did the women come up here?
Well, they followed their husbands up here, and there was no place
living
in town.
In tents? And...
They'd go, their husband didn't know they'd come, and they'd send word out to them where they're working. They'd come in, so he'd go and hire a fellow to pack some sand out on the tundra and build a tent with a frame, and then before it got cold in winter, they'd build sod up around it and live. You could always tell where a woman was.
How
because
was
they had a woman had a window in it and had flowers and geranium or some curtains in the window, you know, a woman lived there.
This was the feminine influence. The men didn't bother with that sort of thing.
Men didn't have that kind of stuff. Men lived the kind of boiled rest that you've seen in my house.
Your house looks pretty nice to me, Mr. Jones. Well, tell me, how long did Nome stay a big boom town?
Well, she stayed a good town until a real live town until the first war, and then they took all of the young men out on that, and then the flu hit her, you see, and that put the cavampus on her for sure.
How many people were there in those early days?
in the early days, the custom house records show there was over 40,000 people came to Nome in 1900.
And there are only about 2,000 here today.
Just about 2,500.
2,500.
Yeah, yeah. And, well, you could give a letter to a fella down here at the Cape, and he'd just passing it from tent to tent, and he'd be put in the post office in Nome.
Mr. Jones, do you still get as much fun out of panning a pan of gold as you ever did?
That's pretty much. The first time I took a big pan and got it, I got the virus, and it's never left me.
How much gold have you ever taken out of one pan, or ever heard of anyone taking out?
Well, the best I ever took was $26.80. I took one pan of that, but I know a fellow that took $102 in one pan, but that was out on the third beach, and he was tending points, and he picked the pan, see.
Well, you've been here in Nome for 60 years now. You've known it back in the old gold rush days when it was a huge town and a lot of excitement. And now you're here when it's a little town on the Bering Sea with not much doing.
Yeah.
Why? Why have you stayed here? Why do you like it?
You want me to recite now?
Recite what?
The poem?
What poem?
The poem I wrote.
Oh, sure, I'd love to hear you.
Well,
You got a poem about it?
Yes, that's the best answer I can give you. I want to go back to Alaska, to her tundras, her mountains and streams, full of salmon, trout, and grayling to add zest to your pork and beans. I want to go back to Nome and land on that desolate shore, and to see an aurora boreal and to hear a blizzard roar. And I want to go back in the mountains with a shovel, pick and pan, and to mine in the river bottoms and stand on my own as a man. And I want to see the daylight, follow the clock around, and winter's steel-light moonlight bluing the snow-covered ground. And I want to drive a dog team at 40 degrees below, and see in the darkening twilight the lights from a roadhouse show. And I know again the welcome from boys who have lived the same, and to do my part in her making right to the end of the game.
This is National Educational Television.